Hi guys, welcome back to SwitchUp. Today we're going to look at the game Mercenaries Blaze, Dawn of the Twin Dragons, which is the 5th game in the series so far, of which you can pick up 3 of them on the Switch in one bundle under the title of the Mercenaries Saga Chronicles. Coming from publisher Circle Entertainment and developer Iridian, which, while many of you may know the name Final Fantasy Tactics, really if we go back far enough takes its inspiration from Tactics Ogre, a very similar tactical role-playing game with an emphasis on having a strong storyline. Are these mercenaries worth hiring, or is this a saga you don't want to go on? Well, let's find out. The story of Mercenaries Blaze, Dawn of the Twin Dragons is an interesting one, if a little heavy-handed at times. It focuses on the issues of racism and immigration, and at times it lacks a little bit of tact. Your adventure begins in typical fashion, taking charge of a group of mercenaries who are working to round up illegal immigrants. Your main character, Lester, has an interesting backstory all of his own which gradually unfolds as the story progresses, with one of his main companions, Alva, a part of this other kingdom who make up the vast majority of the illegal immigrants in the storyline, and as such, he struggles with his own identity and being seen as a traitor by those he's having to round up. While I think it's an interesting change for a developer to try and tackle the issues of xenophobia and racism, it felt a touch shoehorned, both in terms of the writing itself as well as the timing of its delivery. By far my favourite narrative elements were the individual character stories as well as those of new party members as you progress. I think something like some form of choice-based system, or at least having some say in the outcome of certain events, would improve the series overall and might add to the depth of engagement for most players. If you're familiar with the Mercenaries series, then you're going to know how to play it, but you don't need to have played the other games to enjoy this one. Battles are split between story missions and side missions which can be undertaken at your leisure. These are generally used to grind out currency or upgrade your skills and abilities. But unlike the previous titles, I didn't feel like I had to do quite as much grinding this time around, which in all honesty is a blessed relief. There are 2 difficulty modes to choose from, normal and easy, with the latter replenishing a character's health if they level up during combat and also allowing more turns to revive fallen comrades. I played on the normal mode and it offers a decent amount of challenge. Now, at the beginning of each skirmish, you get to choose which of your party are going to be your leader, with each leader having a unique ability that will affect the whole team, such as having a stronger counterattack or starting around with higher base health. You'll then place your group, and when satisfied with their positioning, the combat will start in earnest with your player turn. As you'd expect, each member of your party have their strengths and weaknesses. Some, like the knights, being able to do more damage up front with higher defense, while the ranged classes may offer more of a healing role, and you can assign several AI roles to your team if you'd rather do it that way, otherwise you'll be directly controlling them. Generally, you'll move your player where you want them and then undertake one of your skill moves, which will either be a base attack or one of several which will tap into your magic pool. At its most simple, the aim is to defeat all of the enemies, but doing so, at least on the normal difficulty mode, is going to require the use of all of your team and playing to the strengths of each character. For example, it can be really beneficial to keep your range, fire off all of your ranged abilities and have your players run in the opposite direction of the enemy. As the enemies then move in, having suffered some minor damage, you can surround them, and when your players are close and surrounding an enemy, they'll do even more damage. And the same goes for defending. If you're close together, you'll gain a defense bonus. During combat, there may be discoverable items, and the XP and currency you're awarded is what you'll be using to upgrade each of your character's gear as well as their skills. Skill points can be allocated to upgrade the abilities of your team, with the currency being used to buy new and better gear. There's also a synergy function which allows you to combine weapons, creating unique and generally more powerful items. As you continue to level, you'll have the option to further specialize in a new area, which will give you a few new abilities and a few new additions to the gameplay. You can save your progression at any point from the main map area, but also during combat, which will allow you to quickly load back if things start to go horribly wrong, but combat saves only trigger at key points in the fight, so as to stop players just cheesing the game. As far as controls go, it's very easy to control. You can select the next and previous character very quickly with the bumper buttons, or manually select using the left stick and choosing exactly who you want to use. Through a combination of clicking in the right stick, you can then change the zoom levels and rotate the fully 3D map, and although never quite as good as a mouse and keyboard, the controls are fine. Gameplay overall then, it's quite similar to the previous titles, and I enjoy those a lot. but I am aware that they're very simplistic and also quite similar to the previous entries, so if you didn't enjoy those, well, this might not be for you. There are some incredible turn-based tactical RPGs on the Nintendo Switch with the Disgaea series, as well as the absolutely astounding Fire Emblem, but as I say, if you're after something a little bit more simplistic and that holds a candle to some of the old classics, I think the gameplay here is enjoyable enough, if a little limited. It scores 15 out of 20, and controls work just fine. They score 16 out of 20, although including touchscreen would have been nice in handheld mode. The first thing that came to mind when I booted up the game and looked at the visuals was the Breath of Fire series, which I absolutely loved. If only we could get Breath of Fire free on the Nintendo Switch. Needless to say, the style's not going to be to everyone's tastes and is rather simplistic, but it's one that I find charming and the isometric angles work well for the combat. It is nice to see that they've included a fully 3D map this time around, allowing for slightly more pleasing rotation of the camera, and you can zoom in and out at your leisure. The hand-drawn character designs are very good, but in terms of colour palette, the game certainly does look a little bit drab from time to time. It wouldn't have hurt the developer to potentially have branched out a little bit more in terms of UI design as well, with the overworld areas and the way shops are handled feeling a touch lazy. While the game doesn't feature voice acting or narration, I did enjoy the audio score. The music is pleasant enough and exciting when it needs to be, without being repetitive and irritating. Overall for me, I give those visuals 15 out of 20 and the audio scores 16 out of 20. Mercenaries Blaze, Dawn of the Twin Dragons is going to set you back £17.99 or your regional equivalent, and has a relatively small download size of 491 megs. It releases on the 17th of this month. When I play these types of games, I tend to try and do every single side mission or activity available, and that adds a lot to the longevity of the experience. If you're a similar player, you can expect around about 20 hours out of the game, but as it doesn't thankfully require quite as much grinding as the previous games, you can progress through the story much more quickly. I feel like the pricing for this one is spot on, and as long as you know what you're getting into, I don't think you'll be disappointed with your purchase. I'd hope that in the next iteration we see a little bit more depth, and you won't find much new compared to the previous versions of the game. Mercenaries Blaze most certainly is playing it safe. Still, I think value is decent, and it scores 16 out of 20. So there we have it. Mercenary Saga Blaze is the very epitome of more of the same, which is no bad thing. I just think they could have done a little bit more. It scores an overall SwitchUp score of 78%. Are you a fan of the series, or do you prefer something a little bit more in-depth? If you enjoy the content, consider sticking around, and as always, a big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!